Socrates was used to say that the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. Many philosophers delved into this concept and emphasized the fact that the wiser we become, the more we realize how little we know. But think about that. Who can really say he knows everything about a topic? True real knowledge in investing as well as in life probably does not exist, only different degrees of ignorance. To understand that acquiring knowledge does not turn us into the next guru, but make us just smart enough to take the next above average decision is the first step to start compounding knowledge. Only if we approach every learning opportunity with an open mind, we can start to progress and advance in life. But then, what is preventing us from doing so? I would say self-confidence and arrogance. Humility, thought as a constant desire to overcome what we don't know, is the gateway to attaining wisdom. Humility, in my view, is a fundamental trait for lifelong learning, as it implies realizing our limitation, acknowledging what we don't know, and therefore becoming more open to new ideas, listen to others, and learn from them. This openness is fundamental not only for personal development, but also in investing, where overconfidence can lead to disastrous decisions. The real great investors make more rational decisions not only because they are smarter, but also because they are humble and continuously question their assumptions, their decisions, and also challenge their biases. They acknowledge the fact that markets are irrational and that everyone makes mistakes, and therefore, instead of focusing on having all possible answers, they focus on a continuous improvement and constant learning. Gautam Bate, in his book The Joy of Compounding, writes that the best cure for overconfidence is in constantly reminding ourselves that we have experienced just a tiny fraction of what has happened in the world, but still feel 100% sure we know how it works. And the same applies to investing, where people feel very confident about their knowledge and abilities, and this leads to disastrous decisions and losses. Instead of asking ourselves, am I right or wrong, we should ask ourselves, what are the probabilities for this scenario? Or how can the information that I have not considered alter the final outcome? Or what can prove my thesis to be wrong? If there is one thing we can be sure about, is that we can never be 100% sure. Therefore, we must learn to embrace uncertainty, without feeling anxious about that, but actually welcoming it. In this way, uncertainty ceases to be an indication of failure to become an opportunity to learn. In this way, either we succeed or we learn a lesson. Warren Buffett has always advised investors to stick to their circle of competence.
Some given percentage. But Ted Williams wrote a book called The Science of Hitting. And in The Science of Hitting, he's got a diagram, shows him at the plate, and he's got the strike zone divided into 77 squares, each the size of a baseball. And he says, if I only swing at pitches in my sweet zone, which he shows there, and he has what his batting average would be, which is 400. If he had to swing at low outside pitches, but still in the strike zone, his average would be 230. He said the most important thing in hitting is waiting for the right pitch. Now, he was at a disadvantage because if the count was 0-2 or 1-2 or so on, even if that ball was down where he was only going to bat 230, he had to swing at it. In investing, there's no called strikes. People can throw Microsoft at me and, you name it, any stock, General Motors, and I don't have to swing. And nobody's going to call me out on called strikes. I only get a strike called if I swing at a pitch and miss. So I can wait there and look at thousands of companies day after day, and only when I see something I understand and when I like the price at which it's selling, then if I swing, if I hit it, fine. If I miss it, it's a strike. But it's an enormously advantageous game. And it's a terrible mistake to think you have to have an opinion on everything. You only have to have an opinion on a few things. In fact, I've told students, if when they got out of school, they got a punch card with 20 punches on it, and that's all the investment decisions they got to make in their entire life, they would get very rich because they would think very hard about each one. And you don't need 20 right decisions to get very rich. 4 or 5 will probably do it over time.
This means to restrict your investment opportunities only to those businesses that you can really understand. Again, this requires a lot of humility to acknowledge our limitation and restrict our investment opportunity only to those businesses on which we have an edge. Buffett is also famous for categorizing his investment opportunities into 3 main categories: easy to understand, too difficult, and too complex that is not worth to devote time to study them. He also said once that 99% of the stocks that he studies fall into the 3rd category. So the next time you feel confident about the stock or you think that you really understand the business, think that one of the greatest investors of all time thinks that he does not understand 99% of the businesses that he studies. So, okay, but now you might wonder, fine, I acknowledge my limitation, I'm willing to stick to my circle of competence, but how can I manage to broaden it? Well, there is only one answer to this question, and that is to read. To read as much as you can and to read about everything. One of the key benefits of emotional intelligence is the humility to view the world for what it is and not as we would like it to be. Humble individuals are more adaptable, more resilient in front of challenges, and more likely to achieve long-term success. This is because they are constantly improving, learning, instead of just being focused on what they already know. But how can we cultivate humility? Well, I would say let's invert. Let's start from what led us to overconfidence and arrogance and try to avoid those situations. This includes, for instance, acknowledging when we don't know something instead of pretending to have all the answer, or actively seeking for different viewpoints instead of focusing on defending ours, and also reflecting on our behavior and biases. Humility is the key to acquire wisdom because it opens the mind to new opportunity, fosters continuous improvement, and prevents the arrogance that leads us to failure. Whether in investing or in life, cultivating humility is essential in order to achieve long-term success.